Bonjour et bienvenue de la voiture de la future. It's the Peugeot e-208. Yeah, gonna do a review of this sensible, small French electric car. But obviously, first things first, I need to go and charge it because it hasn't got full charge, and that kind of freaks me out before I do any driving. So I'm gonna go and try and find a charger. I'm gonna take you along for the ride. Woo! Peugeot! Look at the steering wheel, she is so petite. Look at this. I couldn't decide whether to bring a USB-C cable or a normal USB cable to charge my new iPhone. And the clever people at Peugeot have given you a USB-C on one side of the dash and a normal USB on the other. That's clever, isn't it? They know that USB-C isn't the future just yet. Why can't other car companies give you both? It's not charging though. Oh, because the car's not on. It's a good start, isn't it? The car's still not on. The car's not turning on. Literally the first time I've driven this car. It's got a weird Android phallus gear selector. Quite well used to that. I'm in quite a tight parking spot. Let's see if I can get out of it without crashing. Using the rear view camera, which actually switches. Actually, that's cool. It switches to give you a top-down view of the back bumper when you get close to shunting something. How's the turning circle? Ooh, I got out of a very tight space in one go. Oh my god, the steering is super light. Ooh, it feels weird because it's got that Peugeot iCockpit thing. I think they still call it that. I'm probably 5 years out of date with my Peugeot knowledge. Basically, that means that the steering wheel is absolutely tiny. I've held bigger saucers for my tea. It's got a teeny tiny steering wheel, and that teeny tiny steering wheel feels like it's not connected to anything. It feels like it's on friction-free bearings, whereas everyone else for their electric power steering setups have engineered in some kind of resistance. Peugeot clearly hasn't. Initial impressions are though very easy to drive around town because of that. Consumer advice. The digital dashboard, I have this problem with all Peugeots from memory, and everyone whinges about it, and I feel like, you know, it is true. The digital dashboard, the steering wheel, because it's so small, you kind of either want to look through the steering wheel or over it, but it's always a compromise, and you end up just blocking out half the digital dashboard with the steering wheel. So there we go. My big hope for this car, as always, is that it's 25 grand for an electric car. It does 200 miles to a charge, so it's not in that top category of 300 milers that we're always looking for. But again, it's a small car, so it's designed to work around town and be charged at home, that sort of thing. Generally speaking, the ambience in here is quite nice. You could do with a sunroof because it's a little bit claustrophobic. I've got headroom. Yeah. Welcome to Tim Road, who does 8 AM car reviews when I've just crawled out of bed 20 minutes ago. I had to move my car before 8 AM because the parking wardens near me would have done well in Germany, 1933 to 45, put it that way. There's a Lupo GTI. You can't see it, sorry. I've got a second GoPro coming, so you'll be able to see more stuff when I'm babbling on. But that won't arrive for a couple of days. The GoPro Hero 9. Basically, I've only really got it because this GoPro that I normally use keeps losing footage and it's stressing me out. It's quieter than a Lupo GTI with a loud exhaust, I can tell you that. You can probably hear that. It's got a proper fart can on it. It's like being back in Essex where I grew up in the 1990s when everyone had Corsas with body kits and Veilside kits on their Saxo VTSs. Yeah, the fact that I've not really commented on how this car drives yet means that, well, it's just easy to drive. I'm doing normal stuff. It's 8 AM, I'm driving to an electric car charger at a petrol station, which I think has an electric car charger. It's brand new, this petrol station, and I think it's got a charger. And yeah, I'm doing 40 miles an hour. There's the Rosas, the filth. There's an old lady on a Honda Jazz. Normal life. And this is a car, and it's working. It's comfortable. It's quiet. That's probably going to be enough for most people, isn't it? They want an electric car that does those things. I could end the review here. Oh my god. Oh, the brakes are really sharp. First time I've used the brakes and I nearly went through the windscreen. Why is that so sharp? There was nothing, and then everything at once. It was like I had just rammed into a rhino of sorts. Right, I've just arrived at the charger and I think it's working. I think it's new and shiny, and there isn't a van parked in front of it. Just realised that the e-208 has a very, very good turning circle. Boring fact, but it's always nice when you get an electric car because they should have good turning circles by default, because there's not usually a fat engine between the front wheels, so they can free up space to make them turn more, which is always useful when you're parking or reversing into a really small electric car charging bay. Guess what, electric car charging fans? The charger's not working. I think it's too new and it hasn't been turned on yet, so I'm going to try and find somewhere else to go. Break out the old Zap map and see how many millions of miles I'm going to have to drive to find a charger that is working. I should point out that yesterday the Prime Minister of England and UK and everything else, Great Britain, that's what they call it, Boris Johnson, just said they're going to ban sales of new petrol and diesel cars by 2030. Don't do it yet, Boris, because we're not ready. Right, let's go and find a charger that works, and then we can start properly testing the e-208. See, right, how much shunting you got out of the junction? Oh, wheel spin, there we go. It's not very fast, but it's brisk and probably faster than your normal car. Unless your normal car's an Audi R8 or a C63 or even a Golf R. Whee! Mercedes A35 AMG there. How exciting. I forgot how many Teslas there are in this part of the world, and it reminds me that they're all ugly. The brake pedal is a bit weird. It's nothing for a bit, and then it's, I don't know, the braking force increases unnaturally. And I don't normally comment on those things unless they stand out. But you get used to it. One thing that is frustrating that you probably see is when the steering wheel's upside down, it feels the same as when it's the right way up. I know you have that with the circular wheel, but I don't know, it's super extra confusing when you're not paying attention and being a half-wit at 8 o'clock in the morning. Right. I think this charge is working, but I'd just like to raise a point of order about electric car chargers, which I think no one's ever pointed out before. Yes, my great revelation is that the flap on this car is on the other side. I parked on this side of the pump because that's the fast charger cable there. It doesn't reach from there to over there. And nothing infuriates me more when you're at a petrol station and someone refuses to use a pump because they don't know that the pump always stretches to both sides. However, that isn't the case with this, so there we go. Look at it, it's very red. I realise I've just been driving with my flap open. My flapping in the breeze. Right. Ooh, that started flashing green, that might mean it's working. Cheese. These are the shit. Breakfast. Professionals breakfast, donut and scones. So this is the Peugeot e-208 then. It looks like a normal 208, except obviously it's an electric car, so it's got to have a funky grille to tell you it's not got an engine. Not entirely sure about this. I presume that's a panel for radar cruise control and stuff, where it's normally up in the windscreen. So I'm not sure what that's about, but I think it looks quite funky. I think this is a bit of a muted colour. There is a really nice bright yellow, which I was hoping I'd get, but hey, is what it is. It's kind of like Porsche's Carmine Red, isn't it? I'm sure no one's ever compared this to a Porsche. You get an E badge on the C-pillar to tell you it's electric. You also get this back end, which I also quite like, to be honest. I'm not that fussed. I think it's quite cool. It's a small car. This kind of bit here looks a little bit dumpy, a little bit fat. Excuse the pole. And you get an e-208 badge on the back. Charging flap is here. And that's kind of it for the outside. Look at it, sitting pride of place in a Morrison's car park. Ooh yeah. Here's the boot. It's fairly standard stuff, to be honest. For a car this size, you could fit a pram in there, you could fit loads of stuff in there. You could fit a tripod in there. Big bag of charging cables, because I presume, yeah, there's not much space under the boot floor. That's reserved for tyre inflation stuff as usual, because there's no spare wheel. Yeah, reasonably practical. Let's look at the back seats just quickly. They're pretty reasonable. I can get in. Oh, I have to duck quite a bit to get in. That seat's in my driving position, and yeah, it's pretty cramped actually back here, and my head is touching the ceiling, so yeah, it's fine for kids, and it'll be fine for adults on short journeys, like taking your mates to the pub for lunch, when we're allowed to do that again. But it's not exactly palatial in here. N'est pas le Palace de Versailles. Right, enough about the back seats. Let's go up front and do practical things there as well. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, I've kind of finished my breakfast now. Might have eaten a couple of scones. So I'll just give you a tour of the cockpit. So this is the really small steering wheel. It probably looks fine on camera, but it is really, really small. And the idea is you look over the top of it at the dashboard. Let's see if I can light that up. I have to say, it does take a couple of prods of the start button to get it to wake up. So there we go. That's the dash. It's all super high res. It's all quite nice. And it's actually kind of, you can't see, you might be able to see, but it's 2 layers. So that speed is projected on a bit of plastic that sits in front of the rest of the display. It does make it a bit tricky to see at a glance, but you do get used to it quite quickly. That is kind of what I see when I'm driving. I'm 6'3". Obviously you can adjust the steering wheel down so I can control it with my testicles all the way down there. But yeah, I never really find it, I can never get the wheel in a position that suits me for driving and suits me for seeing that. If you're going to buy one of these, definitely take it for a test drive first, because that is annoying. And it's worth pointing out actually that the e-208 is basically the same as the Vauxhall Corsa E, and I don't think that has the same setup, so that's got a more conventional setup. That might be better. Right, enough about the dash, onto the infotainment. It's got a big, I think it's a 10-inch screen. There are smaller screens on the lower spec cars. It's got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto standard, which is really good. What I'm not such a big fan of is you've got physical buttons for some things here, but you've got to use these kind of semi-virtual ones, which don't give you any feedback when you touch them. Hello. To change the aircon, you kind of got to prod that, wait for the screen to do its thing, and then you change temperature up there, which I'm not a big fan of. That is a little bit of a faff. But otherwise, you know, it's all reasonably easy to use. It's just a bit laggy and it feels a little bit old school, but you've got screens for charging information, he says, and driving modes, and turning traction control, obviously your dank car park burnouts, that kind of thing. You've got USB-C and a USB, normal USB, as I said earlier. Little cubby hole here, it's got wireless charging in. That is lovely, it's probably too dark to see. Cubbies there, cup holders there, quite a deep cubby there, and it's all quite nice. It's all quite nice. I'm not sure about the carbon fibre effect on the doors here, but that's quite cool, that little light up bit. Yeah, the cabin's actually quite nice. It could do with a sunroof. It's a little bit dark. That's got quite a thick old school bezel around it. Hello iPhone 12 Pro Max. Right, back to you, Tim. Right, we've charged the e-208, so it's going to do some more driving. Didn't actually tell you the facts about this car, which is obviously remiss of me, as usual. But it's got a 50 kilowatt hour battery connected to a 134 horsepower electric motor, and that will do 0 to 60 in apparently 7.9 seconds. You know, it's not blistering, but it's quicker than a normal car of this size. And as I said earlier, you do get that electric shove, which is just quite entertaining, especially if you come from something like a 1 litre Fiesta or something normal. And it sounds like an electric car because they all sound the same. That's that gentle whine. It's quite calming, quite soothing. The ride is not outstanding. It's not bad. It's comfortable. It's not noisy. It's definitely a car that you could just replace your normal small petrol car with, which is obviously exactly with a 217 mile claimed range as this has. that is kind of fine, isn't it? For dottering around town, going to see your mother, going to the shops, going to the doctors, all that kind of stuff. And if you can charge it at home, it could very easily replace your car. I know I'm going to get attacked in the comments by people who are saying, oh, but I can't travel 400 miles in one go. No, you can't. So what? How often do you do that? You've probably got a second car for that sort of thing if you do those sorts of journeys. A big diesel BMW or something like that. But yeah, sometimes being normal is not a bad thing. Sometimes it's just what you need. You don't need too much car all the time. This is just right. The steering wheel is not enough. That needs to be bigger. Actually, just before we jump to the outro, there's a few things I've discovered since filming that bit near Morrison's. Been doing a bit of motorway kind of driving in the e-208. I have to say, 70 miles an hour, it's really quite surprisingly quiet in the cabin. Normally small cars like this, they haven't got as much sound deadening because they're built down to a price. This is almost whisper quiet at 70 miles an hour, bit of tyre noise, but it's almost like a bigger car in terms of refinement. Really quite impressed, and at 70 miles an hour, it just tanks along. You can do 80, 85, it doesn't feel like it's struggling. It's a pretty good thing, pretty good thing. The handling, it's not exactly fun to drive, but it's quite tidy. You can chuck it around roundabouts at decent speeds and it just grips and goes. It doesn't feel leaden like some electric cars do, I guess because it's got a relatively small battery. Anyway, back to you, Tim. Hope you're somewhere less rainy again. Nope, it's still raining. Fantastic. But anyway, what about the Peugeot e-208 then? Well, it does a very, very good job of being a car, and I don't mean that in a patronising or demeaning way. It just feels normal. It doesn't feel weird because it's electric. There's no compromises to the boot space or really the way it drives or anything. There are some downsides, obviously. The back is quite tight to get into the back and it's not really good for adults back there. A Fiesta is better, but obviously there's not an electric Fiesta at the moment. And yeah, you might not like the looks. I think it looks quite cool. And obviously the range officially at 210-ish miles. In the real world, it's more like 160, 170. This car's actually saying 120 miles on a full charge, but I've done about 40, 50 miles in it and it's not gone down from 120. So I think it is closer to 160. That's a very roundabout way, all in all, of saying this is a very good electric car for someone that just wants to replace their runaround with something that is zero emissionsy. And at 25 grand off the UK government plug-in rebates thing, I think it's a bit of a bargain. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'm sorry about the length of the Morrison's piece. You probably didn't need to watch me eat scones. And I'm going to go because someone's phoning me. Hello? Hello, who's this? Oh, hello, how you doing?